So once again, happy Mother's Day. And I first of all have to, you know, kind of put out the feeling I have of kind of being the elephant in the room. It's a little daunting to replace a woman minister in her pulpit on Mother's Day and be, what I am, which is, basically, boomer guy. So I'm going to do my best to not mansplain anything at this point. I know that's what all the moms who may be listening to this were just dying to have happen today. Mother's Day in church is it's a very meaningful day for me, and I say that because it's the last day I spent in the church of my youth. And the reason I never went back, quite frankly, I was in college and had gone back home for Mother's Day, and I don't remember if I was done with finals or if we still had finals weeks to go. It's the end of the school year, but I went to school about 2.5 hours away from my hometown. I grew up in Vienna, West Virginia, and went to WVU in Morgantown. But I'd come home and say, okay, Mom, whatever you want to do today, we'll do it. Well, of course, Mom wanted to go to church, as we had done pretty much the entire time I was growing up. The church was one of the few places in our town where she could pretty much be guaranteed to get away from my dad. And so we were there Wednesday nights and a couple times on Sunday. And if she could figure out, another time or two during the week, we'd do that too. But we go to church Mother's Day Sunday morning, and of course we start off with all the usual congregational hymns, and they had the responsive reading that they would do, and then because it was Mother's Day, they had the little teeniest kids choir came up and sang, and everybody was very happy with that. And then the minister got up to do his sermon, and this is a guy I didn't know. We'd had two ministers the entire time I grew up. The guy that was there before I was born up until I was in junior high school, and then that was Reverend Robinson, and then Reverend Hadley took over when I was in junior high school, and he was my minister through when I had graduated high school and gone off to college. But at some point when I was in Morgantown, he had left and they'd gotten this new guy in. So new guy gets up there, and we're kind of settling back and expecting to hear something about maybe Jesus's mom, right? Or one of the other well-known moms in the Bible, something nice about motherhood. But new guy proceeds to preach a sermon based on one of the Hebrew Bible scriptures about a woman who committed adultery, which I found completely inappropriate for Mother's Day. I kept looking over at my mom, and Mom had this way of kind of setting her lower jaw to one side and kind of biting down on it when she was literally, keeping herself from saying something. And by the end of this guy's talk, she was just about at bulldog jaw condition 3. And, so it wasn't good. And at the end of the service, like a lot of churches, the new guy was standing where the minister would stand at the back of the sanctuary, and people would shake his hand as they go out and stuff. And she just kind of said to me, "Don't say anything, Charles Robert." Okay, Mom. Whatever you say. So we got out of there. I never went back ever. And that I had a lot of history in that church, but I just couldn't I couldn't understand that. So I really want to make sure that whatever I talked about today, I did it to honor the moms who are going to hear this. And I don't have my mom to ask about that anymore. She's been gone for 18 years. And saying that makes it's kind of hard to wrap my mind around, but that's the way it is. So, I miss you, Mom. But I asked my wife, Laura, and so I explained to her, kind of what was going through my mind. And I said, if I really wanted to honor moms on Mother's Day, what should I talk about? And, she just came to a full stop for about half a minute And finally, she looked at me and she said, pain. Motherhood is pain. And nobody wants to talk about that. And I said, well, wow, tell me more. And so she said, well, first of all, there's the physical pain. I mean, it's, giving birth to a child is enormously painful. The process from, before the birth, she says you have this like alien being inside of you, and it's taking whatever it needs from you. And, she said it even gets to the point where if you're in danger, if your health goes down the drain, the child's body is prioritized over the mother's, even if it kills her. And then, she described childbirth in a way that I'm not going to repeat in a church service, but, I having been involved in one, I can tell you it's kind of like a train wreck in slow motion. And, for anybody that hears this, that's getting ready to go through it and hasn't gone through it before, I'm going to teach you a French word. It's Lamaze, and it's French for great big fat lie. You want to learn 4 words. I want my epidural. And you'll get through that part okay, but then there's still a whole lot of physical pain to be had. The act of nursing for a lot of women is very painful, and there's the pain of all the sleep you're going to lose, and some of the after effects of childbirth, and there are some permanent changes that happen, can go on for years or even decades. Laura was telling me about a couple of friends of hers. One was more a friend of a friend, and both of them had 3 kids, and their last one many years ago. In one case, I know that that particular friend's youngest child's around 20 years old, and they're both going to have surgery to repair issues that they've had ever since. So the physical toll on women, I think there's a reason men used to hide out in the waiting room instead of actually being in there. I don't think we wanted to see that. We don't talk about the pain that goes along with motherhood, which is why Laura suggested I talk about it. Because there's some shame around admitting that. It's anything negative, any of those negative pieces of motherhood, people don't like to admit to, because we put motherhood up on a pedestal. But the truth is it's, as Laura said, it's pain. And that's not to say that it's not a really wonderful thing. And boy, are we all grateful to you, Mom, but if we're going to honor what women do 100%, we need to honor the pain that they go through. And I think one of the ways that we could do that in terms of honoring, especially their physical pain, is by supporting them in their bodily autonomy. I think it's really strange that in a lot of states in our nation, male cadavers actually have more bodily autonomy than living women. And I really don't think that that's what we would call divine justice. And so for all of those women out there, wherever you are, my prayer for you is that you get to decide, if you're ready to be a mom and when you're ready to be a mom, right? So, many blessings for that as we all lift up and support the women in our lives in their choices. But it's not the only kind of pain. And there are some other kinds that I won't get into today, because I'm not going to talk at you for an hour and a half. But, Laura also described what she called the worst pain of being a mom. And that is seeing your children in pain and not being able to do something about it. And boy, there are, a million different ways that can happen. And, that can be, maybe they're in physical pain from everything from they got a boo-boo on their knee, to, watching a kid die of cancer, or having a child with, say something like childhood arthritis, which one of my congregants from Magic City has been dealing with. And there are, you can only go so far, right? You do everything you can do, and then they're still hurting, and there's nothing else you can do, and that's awful. But then there are all those other pains that come along with, kids growing up, and it's everything from, being bullied to, this kid I have a crush on doesn't love me, or, the kid didn't make the team, whatever the team was, or maybe you make the team, but like me, when I was a kid, I wasn't very athletic. I would get on a team, and then I'd sit on the bench the entire time. And that's kind of painful. And mom watched it, she watched it all. There's some parts of that Kate Bush song where she talks about trying not to feel, and, please take it away. And that ends up being kind of the go-to that a lot of moms end up doing. And it's the one thing that I wanted to caution against today, that, and Laura gave me, permission to talk about her experience with this. This is an actual phenomenon where, women basically shut down emotionally. And, of course, men, we've been doing that for, centuries, and it's not been working out real well for us. But Laura actually has a name for that persona. She calls it Robot Woman. And, she has described to me that, for a long time, that she would basically, let Robot Woman take over. And Robot Woman didn't feel. She just, turned off the feelings. And there were some times when Laura was a single mom with custody and a full-time job, and was in grad school, working to get her MBA, and training to run marathons, and running a children's Shakespeare Festival theater all at the same time, where she just kind of had to let Robot Woman take over. But, there's some issues with that. And as I was researching this, I found one article where they talked about this phenomenon. Apparently people have actually researched what happens when women especially put a lid on their feelings. And they had a laundry list of physical problems that come out of that are more prevalent among women who say they've shut their emotions down. And they include, everything from migraines to diabetes to autoimmune disorders. And, it's funny, as I think back about my mom, I know that she had a handful of autoimmune disorders and diabetes when she died. Fibromyalgia, polymyelitis, a couple other things. And it kind of makes me wonder if that was part of her story. But in addition to having actual, even more physical problems, because we're just eating that, whatever feeling it is, and this happens to men too. Robot Woman doesn't get to really feel the joy. The way Laura put it was, where lies my deepest pain, also lies my greatest joy. And she's really right. There's if we are not vulnerable, and if you want some lessons in vulnerability, Brene Brown's a really good one to listen to. We have to be willing to be hurt. We have to be willing to open ourselves up and be vulnerable. And in that place, we're really able to feel the joy that comes along with, whatever it may be. I don't think it's possible for us to truly, deeply experience the joy of parenthood unless we are willing to take all the pain that's out there possible. I mean, I think about the times before I got sober, that I could have spent with my kids, or that things were happening with my kids, and I wasn't emotionally available. I wasn't there, you know? And what a difference it was years later. I remember by the time my oldest got into high school, at one point she was in one of the all-state choirs, and they were doing their all-state thing over in Tampa. I was living in Florida at the time, and I drove over from Orlando, where we lived, to see the final concert of the all-state thing. And I mean, I can remember sitting there just, with tears running down my face. But that wouldn't have been possible if I were still as emotionally unavailable as I had been 10 years earlier. And, from what Laura tells me, I think the same thing's true for moms. I'm pretty positive of it. The biggest payoff of being a parent is in those moments when we catch our kids really enjoying life, really being alive in one way or another. I mean, it can be something as simple as them, eating a bite of birthday cake for the first time, or the first time that they're able to ride their bicycle with training wheels off. But it also may be something, where they've worked really hard to accomplish something. When we see them graduate from something, when we see them on stage, when we see them be successful in a thing that they care about in that moment, we can feel something that we will never get to feel if we have walled off our hearts in a way that makes it possible for us to get through the day without experiencing any pain at all. So it may seem kind of trite for me simply to say, well, just make yourself vulnerable, you'll enjoy things. But I really think that the better solution, in addition to being vulnerable, is not to try to do it alone. And that's one of the other traps of being a parent, period. But boy, especially being a mom, is that shame of, maybe I'm doing this wrong, or maybe I'm feeling something I shouldn't feel, and a lot of times we don't talk about it. We don't share it. To me, when Jesus talked about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, he's talking about not just sharing, food with everybody, and not just sharing healing and health, healthcare with everybody. It was healing back then, right? But not just the worldly things that make life livable, but I think it's also about sharing our joys and our pains, our hopes and our dreams with one another in a way that, as I've heard it expressed other places, that when, when a grief or a pain shared is a pain halved, but a joy shared is a joy multiplied. So I don't know what sorts of, small groups you guys may have going at Unity Anchorage, but boy, if you don't have one, for moms to share, that can be a great, powerful, small group or spirit group, if you call them that. We don't have to do this thing alone. And it's a whole lot easier to not only allow ourselves to feel the joy, but to be able to bear the pain that allows us to feel the joy when we do it together. So, for all of you moms out there, if you're kind of relying on Robot Woman to get through the day, I just want to say, hey, I feel your pain. I I hear you. I know it's tough. And I hope that you will find someone or some people that you can share the burden with, because you're not unique. We're all out there trying to make it through the day, and there's a lot of moms out there who would love to share with you. So let's all put our arms around each other, and especially remember to put our arms around our moms and love them up the way that they love us up, and make sure that they know that they are supported and that it's safe for them to feel joy, because we're willing to share the pain with them. Thank you all for allowing me to share Mother's Day with you, and for all you moms out there, happy Mother's Day.